Students, this is SULEIMAN invertebrate class ZOO222. In this class, we'll be talking about organisms that possess coelom. I'm by name Dr. Hassan Suleiman, and in this course, I shall be taking myself and my colleague Ms. HUSSAINI Fatima will also come in at intervals so that we can round up this course together. So coelomate invertebrate ZOO222. The course outline is here, that is the body cavity of invertebrates. That is what we are going to consider. And we'll also look at systematics, evolution, perspective, general characteristics, relationships of the organism together and other animals, a representative example of the phylum Annelida, Mollusca, and Arthropoda. Okay. First and foremost, the coelomate invertebrate. And what are invertebrates? Invertebrates are traditionally referred to as animals that do not possess backbone. This definition broadly includes a single-cell organism like the Protoctistans and all other phyla of animals that do not have vertebral column. Any organism that do not possess a backbone is termed to be an invertebrate. That in means absence of the vertebral column. That is why they are known as invertebrate organism. In all the organisms that we have in the world, both on land and in aquatic environment, the vertebrates include fishes, the amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, and they make up about just only but 3% of the animals in the animal kingdom. But the other ones, that is the invertebrate organism, made up of about 97% of the animals that we have in the entire universe. So the animals without backbone or invertebrate are the ones, they are mainly invertebrate animals that caught our attention. And many of them are go unnoticed due to their microscopic nature, their size, because they live both outside and the general view of humans, e.g. in water, on the ground, and in the soil. Most of these organisms tends to be ubiquitous in nature because they are found everywhere. Most of them are mostly found in aquatic environment. That is why they are small in nature, and most of them also are found within the terrestrial environment. That is why in the soil we see a lot of them, and other places, even some trees, some of them are found in those areas. So, mainly the coelomate invertebrate. What are coelomate? These coelomate animals are organisms that have a coelom. And what is this coelom? Coelom tends to be a fluid-filled body cavity between the two layers of the mesoderm in some triploblastic metazoans. So, body cavity can be internal body space. In this course, generally in zoology, it is referred to the fluid-filled space in between the internal organs and the body wall. The invertebrate animals, some of them phyla include the Cnidaria, Coelenterata, the platyhelminth, of which they have a solid body type with a mesoglia and mesenchyme, a parenchyma, and so on and so forth. There are three body plans of these metazoans that are distinguishable based on the following: the absence of the body cavity, that is what we call the axillomate. Then number two, we have the occurrence of false body cavity, that is what we call pseudocoelomate, and the occurrence of the true body cavity, that is known as the what? As the coelomate or eucoelomate. Because in the survival of this organism, some of them possess a true cavity, while some of them do not possess. So whenever we're talking about coelomate, we're trying to refer to the organism that have a coelom. And again, many organisms are named based on their morphology. The nomenclature of the organism comes as the result of what the organism possesses, their body structure. So most of these invertebrate organisms possess the coelom, and the coelom plays an important role in their survival. That is the more reason why the organisms are known as coelomate what? Invertebrate. They possess a coelom and they are also invertebrate organism. On that note, that is why the entire organism are known as what? The coelomate invertebrate, because the coelom plays a major role in the survival of this organism. Without the coelom, this organism may not be able to survive, or it is the coelom seems to be the driver of this organism. There are two types of body cavities that occur in these animals. The less common is the pseudocoelom and the coelom. Both cavities are formed during the embryonic development, because it is at that stage that the organism, major part of the organism are formed. The diagram here, as I want to show us the diagram here. I have some diagrams. This is the pointer. This is a flat one. These are axillomate. You can see the flat one. You can see the entire body covering. This from the ectoderm, the tissue that are fluid filled. That is where we are talking about the coelom, the region from the mesoderm, the digestive tract from the ectoderm. So there are the organisms are made up of the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. And these three layers are embedded in the body of the organism. So when you cut the organism inside, these are what you will encounter. This seems to be the practical feature showing the coelom. And this one is coelomate. So a representative is the annelid. As we are seeing in the annelid, this is the body covering from the ectoderm, tissue-filled region from the mesoderm, and the digestive tract from the what? From the endoderm. And this is what the coelom. You can see the coelom. This white covering here is the coelom. It is the fluid field that the organism is surviving on. So you can see all the other layers. The coelom is embedded inside the layers that the organism is surviving. And again, we can see the next one, we have the pseudocoelomate, that is false coelomate, which shows also the body plan. And this diagrams is the diagram of body plans of the metazoans. Meta means many cell layers. So in this one, we also have the body covering, that is from the ectoderm, tissue-filled region, from the mesoderm, digestive tract, from the endoderm, and pseudocoelom. That is the false coelom, which also plays a vital role in this organism, in their own survival. So with these diagrams depict the nature of the organism, that the true picture of the coelom. Are we together? Okay. Now on the types of body cavity, we have the two types of body cavity that occur. As I mentioned earlier, we have the pseudocoelom, and the commonest one is the coelom. And these body cavities are formed during the embryonic development. And the pseudocoel, the first cavity that appears during the embryonic development, is known as the blastocoel. Sometimes it is also called the primary body cavity of the organism. The formation of the guts reduces to the blastocoel. In between the ectoderm and the endoderm also remains. Then we also have the axillomate form. The pseudocoel is also a cavity that is left by the failure of the parenchyma to completely fill in between the spaces. And the gut wall of the pseudocoelomate therefore has no muscle layer, as it is found among the coelomate. Coelom. This is a secondary fluid-filled body cavity that forms a new space in between the mesoderm, and it is completely surrounded by the what? The mesodermal tissue. The fluid in the cavity, on the coelomic cavity, does not have a direct contact with the body of the gut wall, but it is separated by both the peritoneal epithelium, and that is the peritoneum. The coelom is formed during the embryonic development by some splitting of the mesoderm due to the accumulation of the fluid, and the coelom also increases in size as the outer part of the mesoderm becomes intimately associated with the body wall, and it is lined by the parietal or somatic mesoderm, which becomes the parietal peritoneum, and the inner lining, and so forth that makes up the coelom. The schizocele also occurs in annelids, mollusks, arthropod, and other mollusks. Arthropod, the coelom is reduced. In arthropod, the coelom is reduced mostly to replace by a hemocele. Hemocele seems just like a blood fluid in them that give them that plays the role of the blood. Hemo means what? Means hema in hematology is like blood, and then seal, that has to be the cavity in them that is responsible for carrying so many activities. As we go further, we'll see the significance of the coelom and the more reason why this organisms are known as what? Coelomate invertebrate. All boils down to the important nature or the role that this coelom is playing for in this organism, and that is why they are named as what? Coelomate invertebrate. Now, this is the significance of the coelom. The coelom, as I mentioned earlier on, organisms are named based on some peculiarities and some of the major features that this organism possess. The significance of the coelom now, that is the role, the importance of the coelom in this organism. So, number one, the organs are embedded in a tissue that is the parenchyma in the axillament and are compressed anytime the animal moves its body, whereas there is freedom of movement of internal organs in animals that have a body cavity. This freedom of movement allows for efficient transportation of gut content, that is, the movement of food substance that the organism is eating from one place to another, because the entire body cells need nutrients. They need this food that the organism are taking in. So, and it is in this coelom that allow the free movement of internal organs. This food, the nutrient, and whatsoever that this organism are eating, it moves freely to other parts of the body. So it is in this coelom that the free movement is taking place, and there's efficient transportation. So without this coelom, there will be no efficient transportation of gut content, that is, even other nutrient, to respective parts of the organism that warrant the survival of this organism. A body cavity also, the coelom also, or the coelom or this cavity provide a space for development of gonad, that is the sex cells, so that the eggs and sperms are stored in a constant environment. The advantage of this is that animals with body cavity can restrict their breeding to certain times of the year that are favorable, unlike those that breed all year round, thereby losing their offspring. In this case, they will minimize in their earlier group. I want to say this, there's no organism that want to die. Every living organism that want to die will somehow try to regulate and control the way it gives birth to its own offspring. So in this case, the coelom plays an important role so that all the gonad, all the sex cells, the sperms and the eggs are stored in a constant environment, and so that they don't get destroyed. The advantage of this is that the organism can breed at any season, at any period, any time of the year. If you know some of these organisms, because they want their offspring to survive, so they want to ensure they give back to their young ones whenever the environment is favorable for them, either during the rainy season, during the dry season. So they tend to regulate to ensure that the young ones survive. They don't want the situation whereby they give birth to their young ones and loses them. So this coelom provide a constant environment for these sex cells to enable this organism to regulate the way and the rate of which they give birth to their young ones. And this coelom, again, another important or significance is that it is the cavity that acts as transporting medium for metabolite and excretory product. The fluid-filled cavity can also act as a hydrostatic skeleton. This hydrostatic skeleton is in contact with the muscles of the body wall and the gut, which increase the mechanical efficiency and rapidity of the movement. You know, hydro means water, static is the constant movement that is static. That is why you can see some of these organisms carry out an undulating movement from one region to another. Hydro, because the fluid means has to do with water and static. So it acts as a cavity that it acts as a hydrostatic skeleton, a skeleton that contains water and of which it makes contact with the muscles wall, the body wall, and the gut, which increase the mechanical efficiency, and it also warrant the organism to move from one place to another. So without the coelom, it is the coelom that enables the organism, that propel the organism to move from one region to another, because they are animals, not plants, that are static in one place. So this coelom enables them to move from one region to another so that they can search for what they can eat in order to survive. Because without no organism, as it is living, especially animals, have the ability to move from one region to another to enable them meet their need in terms of feeding. The next important is the increase in size and complexity. This is possible in animals with a body cavity. Problems that might arise in the increase in size are solved by transportation, e.g. blood vascular system. What the challenges that the animal are supposed or organism are supposed to face due to the complexity, then it is already solved by the presence of this coelom. There's greater complexity that is also required in coordination. The more elaborate the nervous system, and the purpose of this decentralization is part of the formation of an elaborate and complex nervous system. So all these ones are embedded or as a result of the significance of this coelom, because it has the ability to regulate all the activities that the organism is supposed to undertake to ensure its survival within its ecosystem. And there's another key thing that is known as metamerism. And this metamerism is taking place among the coelomate. And what is metamerism? Metamerism is an important adaptational structure that is seen in many coelomates. It is the division of the body into series of similar segments that are developed to the same degree and are arranged in this linear series from the anterior to the posterior end. That has to do with the segmentation of the organism. Most coelomate organisms are linear in series, and when you take a look at them as we go further, we'll see so many examples. Most of them seems to be segmented, and each of these segments may have a subdivision of an organ that is an ideal metamerically segmented animal. And this segment, most of them tend to carry the reproductive and excretory organs in them, as well as the skin, the muscles, the nerve, the circulatory structure. Such animals, however, are purely hypothetical. Metameric animals shows some special levels of what of these structures to a greater or less extent. Most invertebrate organisms, such as annelids and arthropods, are regarded as basically metameric in nature. And why are they regarded as metameric in nature? This has to do with the segment, various segment. As we go, I'll give us, like when you take a look at the earthworm. Earthworm is somehow segmented. It is segmented in its appearance. There are is long to either some in various or degrees of centimeters. But when you take a look at them carefully, you see that it has some segmentation in their bodies. But this condition is some extensively modified in the arthropod that is almost not recognizable. The annelid demonstrate at least modified form of metamerism. Like in the most of this arthropod, like an insect, you can see it has an possess an abdomen that is metamerically segmented from I give example with the mosquitoes, of which I'm more and more familiar with. It has about 10 segments within the abdomen, and we also have the thorax, which is also segmented into three: pro, meso, and metathorax. And also we have the head region. So, and again, we have what is known as cephalization. Those are key things that are peculiar to this coelomate. This refers to the development of all the features that is associated with the head. And it is also serve as a feeding apparatus. Sense organs, the nervous system, the tissues are all embedded in all part of this cephalization that has to do with the head formation of this organism, and of which it possesses most of the sense organs, the nervous system, are found in this region. And again, we have the prostostomes and deuterostomes. Coelomate has mainly or largely divided into two major groups, and many of the reasons for this separation are based on their comparative word embryology. All these are exceptions of the following generalizations. According to zoologists, they are convinced that these two groups are true evolutionary groups. We have the protostomes. This has to do with this embryonic development that is characterized by the mollusks, the annelid, the arthropod, and these include the four main components. We have the spiral cleavage of the eggs after fertilization, and the upper tier of the cells are twisted at 45 degrees of the line with the lower tier. We have the blastospore, the development of the mouth. Proto means first, and stome means the mouth. You see, and in lower invertebrate, that is 211, perhaps I think that we discussed, we are not talking of some of this organ formation, sorry, some of this advancement in terms of the mouth, in terms of metamerism, in terms of cephalization, and many of this. They are not there, but that shows that there is an advancement, and we have the schizocylous nature. The coelom are formed by what? The splitting of the mesoderm. The determinate mosaic embryo. This has to do with the removing of a cell from four cell stage that result in the arrested development of the embryo. Eggs are also the developed eggs also appear to be directly from the cytoplasm that are also localized in the organism. The deuterostome that I mentioned earlier has to do with the embryonic development that are characterized by the echinoderms, the chordates. This include the four components that I just mentioned: the radial cleavage, the blastophore, the enterocellulose activities, and the intermediate that has to do with the regulative of the embryo at a point. And again, I want us to also look at the another major organism in the phylum, that is that has a typical example of the coelomate, which has to do with the phylum Annelida. The name Annelida is derived from the word annulus, which means little ring, and aptly describe the ring appearance of annelid. The segmentation is the key innovation of this group. The segmentation, segments, as I mentioned, all as I mentioned in metamerism that has to do with segmentation. And then in these members of this phylum, what distinguishes them, what makes them outstanding, what makes them distinct, what makes them to stand out is the segmentation innovation of this group. And that has to do with the diagnostic and special features of this annelid. Most of them, number one of the feature is what? They are bilaterally symmetrical. That means vermiform. They are worm-like in nature. The members of the phylum Annelida are worm-like in nature. That is what they are, bilaterally symmetrical. Vermiform in bracket, worm-like. By the time you cut the organism into two, what you are seeing in this side is equally the same thing you are also seeing at the other side of it. That is what makes it bilateral symmetrical. That means bi means two, lateral, when you divide it into two, symmetrical in nature. And then the body, there are more than two cell layers with tissues and organs. You know, in lower invertebrate, most organisms are single cell organisms. But in this coelomate, many of them are metazoans. That means they have more than two cell layers. They are thick with tissues and organs. When we're in the lower invertebrate, we're not talking of tissues, we're not talking of organs, but we can see here we're talking of tissues and organs. It has a muscular gut with mouth and anus. You can see an advancement over the lower invertebrate. As we can see, we never talk of any gut, we never talked of mouth, we never talked of anus when as we're talking in lower invertebrate. But in this one now, we can see we're talking of mouth, anus, and which are the major features. Their bodies are divided into segments. The segmentation may not be visible externally, but it is always evident in the nervous system. For example, now as we go further, we'll see the earthworm. In this segmentation of the earthworm, you will see that you may not see clearly the segmentation. It is not too visible, but externally at times it's not too glaring, but there's always evidence of the nervous system that is a bit advanced compared to other organisms. There's a pre-segmental postomium containing a nervous ganglion and post-segmental peridium. You see, in other organisms, especially in lower invertebrates, we're not talking of prostomium containing the nervous ganglion and whatsoever, but this one here is a major feature. The body cavities has a series of schizocells obscured in specimen with anterior and posterior suckers. The body cavity are often divided by transverse seta, but frequently suppressed or obscured in some or all of the segments. The outer epithelium is covered by the cuticle and epidermal bristles, chitin in bundles or single. The body wall is muscular, often compete with circular muscle layers and in 4 blocks of longitudinal muscles. It has a closed blood system. The nervous system with pre-segmental supraesophageal ganglion and all the ventral cord with segmental ganglia. So these are the major features of the members that are found in this phylum Annelida. This is also the continuation of the major features. The larva may not be present, is present, or it may be absent. Some forms also produce asexually, some sexually. The protostomes with spiral cleavage and so on and so forth. The segmental duct of the mesoderm and ectoderm origin, which may be combined, are restricted to one or few segments, and they are partially suppressed at times. Prostostomes with the spiral cleavage are also the major features that are found among these members of the phylum Annelida. And again, we also have what is known as the diversity of annelids. The annelids are made up of about 12,000 species. This includes sandworms. Perhaps you must have heard of sandworms before. If you don't not heard of sandworms, also had fanworms. We have bristle worms. We have ragworms. We have the earthworms, which seems to be the most common one that every one of you seems to be familiar with them. And the leeches, though some may be familiar with leeches, but these also found among the members in the diversity of annelids. Most of them are marine in nature. That means they are found in the sea, in oceans, and many other places in nature that is aquatic in nature. But they are also common on land and also in fresh water. Most are found in fresh water, and some are found largely or mostly in the marine environment. As I mentioned earlier from the introduction, out of the 100% of the organism, the vertebrate consists of only 3%, while the invertebrate consists of about 97%. So in this 97%, largely most of them are found in aquatic environment. That is, in aquatic environment, you find some that are in the marine environment, you find some that are also found in freshwater, some are found in both in brackish environment, that is some aquatic environment that possess what both the brackish component and the freshwater component altogether. We have the classification of this annelid. There are three major classes of the members of the phylum Annelida, named based on the presence or absence of chitin and on their number and nature. And these are as follows. The class Polychaeta, these are marine worms that are commonly called or fan worms, feather worms, tube worms, bristle worms, rag worms, and sandworms. That is what the Polychaeta. They have there are many of them there, and they are mostly found within the marine environment. The class Oligochaeta. This class Oligochaeta are members that possess these members include the earthworms, of which many of us seems to be familiar with them, and they are found both in terrestrial and freshwater environment. Then another special class is the leeches. The class Hirudinea, and these members include the leeches. Mostly they are freshwater, some are terrestrial and marine in nature. As they are arranged in this order, the complexity of this organism is also in line with the nature and the class of which they belong to. As we go further, we'll see the major features of each class that warrant this organism to be placed in that particular class. Organisms are classified and diversified based on the nature that they also possess with one another. The taxonomies or the members of that are responsible for this classification of this organism have to look closely to the nature of what and how this organism, what they possess, that warrant them to put them together in a particular class, like this fan worms, feather worms, tube worms, the bristle, ragworms, and sandworms. There are some common features they possess that warrant the taxonomies to put them together in the class Polychaeta. And this Oligochaeta, the earthworm that are found, there are so many species of them. As we go further, we'll see them. And also in the members in the class Hirudinea, the leeches, they are mostly fresh water. Some are terrestrial and marine in nature. And this is the reason why they are placed or classified in this order. Here are some example of of uh, of this earthworm. This one we can see as I mentioned earlier on, this is the male, the segmentation. And one thing with this one I forgot to mention is that they are hermaphrodite in nature. That is, they possess both and female reproductive system in them. Okay, are we together? So this is the seta, this is the mother, this is prostomium, this is the male what paw, the anus, the clitellum, which is here. There is no, this is I think the this is the major reproductive segment that is taking place here. The prostomium, this is the member of the class Oligochaeta. And again, the second one is the leech. Is a leech, as I mentioned, Hirudinea granulosa. You can see how it appears. And when you take a look at the entire organism, this is earthworm, as you can see. So it is muscular in nature, and inside it is made up of what various segments, as I mentioned, or as I talked about metamerism, different segments. You can see different segmentation all through the organism, and in them there are several layers, and the coelom is embedded inside the layers. Likewise, we can see this one. Excuse me, the segmentation seems not to be too pronounced like in the oligochaete, that is in the earthworm, but you can see the segmentation, the receptor organs, the male genital pore, the female genital pore, the posterior sucker. Or as we go further, we'll see the classification, what each and every member also possess that makes them to be grouped in different classes. And then this one is the one, you can see it possesses a sucker. It is sucking blood. You can see it sucking in human skin. You can see it is penetrating the human skin. That is the nature, and some of them tend to be medicinal. As we go further, we'll see some of the features that shows the clear that define these members, the hirudinea, and also this earthworm, how they behave, that makes them to be placed in this class. Are we together? So this is the anus, as I mentioned. This is the another posterior anterior end, that is the mouth, and the anus, the posterior sucker of the members of this hirudinea, that is the leeches. As we go for the digestive tract, they have a very peculiar way of feeding. Every organism wants to survive. They have the ability to feed any organism that is surviving as they must feed. So lumbricus terrestres, that is the earthworm, the digestive system, and their feeding. They feed on decay and fallen leaves together with the saprophytic fungi and bacteria, which cause their decay. And that is, they pick on the leaves, and these fungus and bacteria causes their decay. It collects the leaf from the soil surface at night and pulls them into its burrow, because they burrow through the ground, while it remains an anchor to the burrow by the tip of the posterior of the body. The large quantity of soil are swallowed during the feeding and also during the burrowing. As they burrow through, they use the anterior or the posterior region and burrow through. And that is why you see the environment, they live in a moist environment. And that is why you can see they have the ability to pull through, to burrow through down the ground in order to get to where they can settle down. And as they are doing it, there's contraction of this muscle pump that pump food into the mouth as they are doing it. So, and also the lining of pharynx is highly glandular, with salivary glands secreting mucus to provide the necessary moisture. The moisture secreting glands are always present at the anterior part of the alimentary canal in most of these terrestrial animals, where there is no liquid that is taken in with the food. So it is a common feature. And this is the digestive tract of the lumbricus terrestres, showing the regions of of how the digestion is taking place. The region at the anterior end, followed by the long uniform intestine. You see the crop, and the gizzard, the intestine, the anus, the pharynx, and you can see all the necessary digestive components that the even higher organism also possess. This is what is embedded in this organism. They have the ability to carry, this is the esophagus, sorry, and this is the esophagus, the crop, the gizzard, the intestine, all the digestive tract of the earthworm. And it also carried out its normal digestion as is found among other organisms, respectively, conveniently without any challenge. You can see the diagram. That is the diagram now. Whether crawling or burrowing, that is locomotion now. The one proceed by extension and anchoring, and the contraction rather by what? By undulating. Undulation, it has to go up and down, vertically, horizontally, it goes in that order. Each segment becomes alternative short and fat because there's a contraction of the longitudinal muscle or a long thin by the contraction of the sacrum, and alternative waves, and that's how the organism is able to move from one place to another. There is blood circulatory system and exchange of gases. The blood is similar in composition of the nares, and it contains a respiratory pigment, the hemoglobin, in solution. The hemoglobin that carries oxygen around, even in human being, is also applicable to them. The circulatory system is a closed one, as I mentioned earlier, based on the similar plan that involve the combination of longitudinal and segmental blood vessels. The main collecting blood vessel is the dorsal blood vessel, which run from all the entire length of the organism, that is suspended within the entire system of the organism. That has to do with the circulatory system and exchange of gases. And an additional control of the blood flow is provided by the system of the passive valve of the vessels. excretion. The excretion in this earthworm or most of this annelid is through the nephridium, which have the tubules, the solenocytes, and the blind end within the cells, which contain the flagella, like the whip-like projections. That is what in lumbricus territory, that is the earthworm. One of the pair of nephridia is closely resembled to those of the nereis, and they are present in every segment except in the first three and the last, because in all the segment, all these things are present there. So if they want to excrete, they don't need to go back to the first or the last segment. Each segment has the ability to dish out any waste product that is contained within the body of the organism. We have the nervous system and the sense organs. They have a specific, a well-developed nervous system that enables them to trace their prey, their predators, so that they can run away from them. Lumbricus has 5 giant fibers. These three are large and medially placed on the dorsal side of the nerve cord. The 2 are smaller, ventral, that has the ability to detect any danger so that it will warrant the organism to run away from the danger. We have sensory structures. Oligokit lack the appendages. We have the touch receptors, we have the photoreceptors, we have the chemoreceptors, and many of them, as you can see in the notes here. The touch receptors, let me just start with the sensory structures. Okay, the sensory structures, they lack sensory appendages, but they are capable of showing a range of responses to the environmental condition. Their sense organs are relatively simple in structure, consisting of a simple and epidermal variation to sense cells or group of cells. And there are most common types. We have the touch receptors. They consist of a single cells, each with a short hair-like projection through which the cortical. This may be extremely numerous and up to 1,000 per segment. The concentration on the prostomium and the last segment, these cells are said to be also sensitive to changes in temperature. And that is why you see most of these organisms, the annelid, when they perceive that there is danger, when the temperature is too high for them, they run away. And mostly during the rainy season, which the temperature is okay and is optimum, that is when you see a lot of them hanging around, and they are in abundance in that season, because of these touch receptors that are sensitive to changes in temperature. Whenever there is in dry season, you hardly see them because they go in hiding, they go to hide, they go into hibernating in some very moist environment close to the riverine area. And during the rainy season, you can find them all over the environment, that is in the terrestrial environment. Where photoreceptors, they are concentrated in and below the epidermis of the prostomium. Some occur generally all over the dorsal of the body. Each is derived from the single cell and has a small transparent lens which focuses light on the neurofibril network, and they are mostly abundant in those regions of most frequently exposed light, the anterior and posterior end, and are absent from the ventral surface. Chemoreceptors, they are clusters of sensory cells that are in the form of tubercles that occur in group and ring, and in each segment. In lumbricus terrestre, they are particularly concentrated in the prostomium, and they have as many as 700 per square millimeter and have been reported. And this gives the organism ability to detect the presence and of organism or any organism that want to attack them. They also detect the object that is very important for the animal that live underground to be positive in this their response and the ability to detect vibration in transmitting solid objects. So on this note, I think we'll stop from here, and then we also continue in the next class, so that we can I would like to stop either on the economic importance of this annelid next time. Thank you for listening.